Tonight, we bring you inside one of the most dramatic, high-stakes operations on the open ocean. A U.S. Coast Guard helicopter intercepts a cartel drug boat worth tens of millions of dollars. And what unfolds is part cat-and-mouse chase, part surgical precision strike. This is the story of the Go-Fast that thought it could outrun America's Guardians of the Sea, and the elite marksman who proved otherwise. Setting the scene. It was 10 a.m. local time in the Eastern Pacific. The ocean looked calm, but beneath the surface of that quiet blue horizon, a storm was brewing. A high-speed smuggling vessel, known in law enforcement circles as a Go-Fast, was racing across open water. 4 massive outboard engines roared as the boat pushed 50 knots, nearly 5 times faster than a typical fishing craft. But these weren't fishermen. Beneath blue tarps, the smugglers carried nearly 2,800 pounds of contraband, valued at over $42 million on the street. For the 5 men on board, this run had been done many times before. Same route, same timing, same payoff. Each stood to pocket millions if they made it through. The watchful eye. What they didn't know was that 2 hours earlier, high above them at 25,000 feet, a U.S. Coast Guard HC-130J Super Hercules aircraft had already spotted them. Its radar operators flagged the boat for several red flags: speed inconsistent with normal shipping traffic, a suspicious route away from established lanes, and no electronic transponder broadcasting an identification signal. Through powerful cameras, the surveillance crew could see every detail: the multiple engines, the tarped cargo, even the smugglers moving across the deck. From that moment on, the cartel boat was marked. Its fate was sealed. Coordination and strategy. The data moved quickly through encrypted channels, from the aircraft to the Coast Guard cutter Kimball, and further still to the Joint Interagency Task Force South, based in Key West, Florida. Even the Drug Enforcement Administration was looped in. This was no ordinary patrol. This was a textbook interdiction in progress. Now, the Kimball herself couldn't outrun the smugglers. She topped out at 28 knots, far below the cartel boat's blistering 50. But the math worked in America's favor. The smugglers' engines burned fuel fast. At full throttle, their tanks wouldn't last 4 more hours. And the U.S. Coast Guard had something far faster already airborne. Enter Hitron. At 11 a.m., the MH-65E Dolphin helicopter lifted off from the cutter's deck. This was no search and rescue mission. This was a Hitron mission, short for Helicopter Interdiction Tactical Squadron. Based in Jacksonville, Florida, Hitron is the Coast Guard's elite aerial strike team, trained to do one thing better than anyone else on the planet: chase down Go-Fast boats and disable them with surgical precision. Since the late 1990s, Hitron crews have intercepted more than 500 drug smuggling vessels, cutting billions of dollars worth of narcotics from cartel supply chains. And today, they were about to add one more notch to their record: the chase. From 3 miles out, the helicopter crew spotted the telltale rooster tail, an enormous white spray plume trailing behind the fleeing smugglers. The men on the boat thought their zigzag pattern made them unpredictable, impossible to pin down. Against surface vessels, that tactic might work, but against a helicopter, it was pointless. The aircraft simply flew straight, cutting corners through the sky that no boat could ever match. The smugglers were already in trouble. They had burned nearly half their fuel, with hours still to go before reaching their supposed mothership rendezvous. But desperation fuels bad decisions, and these men weren't ready to stop. Compliance first. Following strict Coast Guard protocol, the helicopter initiated the compliance phase. Using a long-range acoustic device, the crew broadcasted commands in both English and Spanish. "Stop your vessel! Prepare to be boarded! This is the United States Coast Guard!" The downwash from the helicopter's rotors whipped the ocean into chaos, spray flying everywhere. But the smugglers, they didn't even flinch. they pushed their throttles harder. For them, stopping meant federal prison and decades behind bars. Running meant a slim chance of escape. They gambled on speed and ignored every warning. Warning shots. After 15 minutes of ignored commands, the rules of engagement allowed escalation. The helicopter gunner swung the M240B machine gun into position. At 650 rounds per minute, its message was crystal clear. Bright tracers and splashes peppered the water just ahead of the smuggler's bow. Normally, that's where most crews surrender, but this cartel boat was stubborn or reckless. They kept going, weaving side to side, trying evasive maneuvers that looked more theatrical than effective. The decision was made. These smugglers would only stop when their engines stopped. Precision strikes. And so the helicopter gunner reached for the weapon that has made Hitron famous, the Barrett .50 caliber sniper rifle. At 30 pounds, firing rounds with enough energy to punch through an inch of steel, this weapon is no ordinary rifle. It is engineered to do one thing at sea: disable engines with brutal efficiency. One by one, the shots rang out. The first bullet tore through the starboard outer engineing, sending fragments and black smoke erupting into the air. The boat slowed immediately. The second round destroyed the port engine. Speed dropped again. The third shot was surgical, taking out another block with mechanical perfection. And finally, the fourth shot ended the smuggler's desperate run. From 50 knots to 0, the Go Fast was now dead in the water. No engines, no escape. The boarding. With the smugglers stranded, the cutter launched its small, fast boats, rigid-hulled inflatables carrying heavily armed tactical law enforcement operators. Approaching in a pincer formation, they boxed in the disabled vessel. Commands shouted in Spanish left no room for misinterpretation. Hands up, down on your knees. 5 smugglers, outgunned and outnumbered, raised their hands. The boarding was swift, professional, and final. The men were secured, the evidence was preserved, and the $42 million cargo was taken out of circulation. The aftermath. But the boat itself had no future. Under international maritime law, it was a stateless vessel. The Coast Guard wasn't about to let it fall back into cartel hands. After removing the suspects and evidence, operators doused the craft in accelerant and lit a flare. Flames raced across the deck. Black smoke curled into the sky. The cartel's multi-million-dollar boat burned until it sank beneath the waves, a fiery symbol of what happens when smugglers test America's maritime borders. Reflection and impact. This single operation represents just one of hundreds the U.S. Coast Guard conducts each year. It's a constant battle across vast stretches of ocean, far from the public eye, against cartels that will stop at nothing to move their product north. But on this day, 5 smugglers lost their freedom, millions in drugs were seized, and an elite Coast Guard team once again proved why Hitron is considered the apex predator of maritime law enforcement. To the cartels, the ocean may look wide open, but for the men and women of the Coast Guard, it's just another patrol zone. And for smugglers who think they can outrun justice, well, this story shows exactly how that ends.